is not necessarily about writing great songs. It's about growth as a person. How do you express yourself? How do you use language? How do you develop a melody? And you're learning that with every song you write, and then eventually that does result in opportunities. After you've learned those essential, fundamentals.
Between the Grooves is hosted by James Curtis, music director and morning man in the Greater Toronto Area on Joy Radio, and Aisha Woods, Grammy-nominated singer, songwriter, and musician. Together, they talk with artists and industry insiders to discover our connection between music and faith. You can connect with us on Facebook or Twitter at Between Grooves. Now, here's James and Aisha.
Between the Grooves, episode 265 with James Curtis and Aisha Woods. How are you, Aisha?
Hello. I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing well. I'm enjoying this season because, I've told you this before. I'm a summer fan, so I'm looking forward to all the things that are coming in the future. It's already started with summer festivals and everything else.
Yes.
I just enjoy that, and I like walking out of the house with shorts. Slip on the flip-flops or sandals or whatever, and you don't have to. In Canada, we've got the winter coats in the wintertime and scarves and mitts or gloves, and it's just nice to be able to walk out and not have to worry about all that stuff,
That's so nice. We've actually just finished the first annual family vacation with my side of the family. Everyone came down from Dallas, and it was wonderful. It was hot, but it was really, really nice. It's something that we look forward to every year.
Well, it is time to get to our conversation with Michael Bethany. Now, you know Michael, don't you?
I do. I know Michael, and we have mutual friends that have been in ministry together for years on end, and we've recently been reconnected. So I'm excited to talk to him and find out what all he has going on in this season in his life.
He's been pretty active in the gospel community, and he's been involved in a lot of award-winning artists. He's a singer, he's a songwriter, he's a worship leader, pastor, recording artist, and of course a dad. Really looking forward to this conversation as well. Michael Bethany on Between the Grooves. Well, you're not looking at us. There's no video.
Okay. Oh, this is just audio.
This is just audio,
Yes, it's just audio.
Okay, great then.
We could probably paste a picture of ourselves on the screen. No, okay, it's worth a shot. So, Michael, I understand you come from a musical family.
I do, absolutely.
What does that entail as far as your family is concerned? Like everybody can sing, or everybody can play a musical instrument, or all of the above?
Yeah, actually. So my mother and father, my mother was an incredible vocalist, and so was my dad. My dad played the electric guitar, and he was kind of like a B.B. King, George Benson.
Oh wow!
Kind of guy. He was really good, and he could. I mean, he was such a crooner. He could really sing. And they released an album. Well, actually, my mother died when I was 2, but right before she passed away, they just completed an album, and an LP back in those days. And so that's kind of where I come from. My father was a first generational musician and singer, because nobody before him had ever sang, and his father was the first Christian in our family. So
wow.
I grew up as a pastor's kid, because my father, he became a pastor, and music was new to my whole family. It was not a thing. And but my mother, she came from all that. So just a legacy really through my mother, really, and my dad. And so all my siblings, my father, because he pastored a church, everyone had a job, and if you didn't play something, you had to learn something. So bass, drums, organ, guitar, and I was a singer, and I had to play the organ, and
wow.
So we all had something to do, and it was very much a part of our life, every one of us, except for 2 siblings who somehow got away with it. So
Did you inherit any of those guitar playing skills?
Okay, I didn't inherit it. My father would try to stare me down while he played the guitar, somehow thinking that that would convince me to join him. But it just made me kind of weirded out. It's like, why are you looking at me? And I couldn't look away. It just it was so strange. Like, look at me play. Look at me play. Come on. And I just wasn't interested. I do play a little now, though. I hate that
Oh
I did
yeah.
not. I hate that I didn't really embrace it, because if I had, it would have really been a really great aspect if I had really taken on what he'd done. But however,
Hmm.
yeah, I do play a little now, but I primarily play piano. So
Okay.
yeah, that's the side I took from that.
I've mentioned to Aisha in the past about the fact that, 20, 30 years ago, it seemed like keyboards were the way to go. And then they kind of took a side stage for a while there, while everybody jumped on their guitars. It was almost like the guitars were easy to transport, and it just
Sure.
easy to lead and stuff. And then, slowly the keyboard has come back, which I think is great, because, getting a good piano sound, and I'm not talking synthesizer, I'm talking like a good piano or like a
Yeah,
Hammond organ or something like that. Getting that groove into the music sounds awesome.
absolutely.
And what about singing for you? When did that start in your, if you want to call it, career, or even in your upbringing at church?
Okay, on two sides of that, like as a kid, I was always singing. I was always singing at home, but no one was paying attention to me. I grew up in a home there's seven siblings, but five of us in the home because we had a blended family. So I was
Okay.
there's only one younger than me. Everyone was doing something. So my oldest was playing bass. The one under him was singing and playing the organ. The one under him was playing drums and organ. And then there was me. I wasn't doing anything. And then there was a baby boy taking all the attention. So I was just like lost in the shuffle. But one day I sang by accident at church, just by chance. It was totally not planned. My brother
Mm.
just somehow tricked me into singing while he got to show off this new song he could play, and he needed someone to sing. So that's when I discovered I could sing. I was about 8 years old, and from that point on, it was like my life changed. Like, oh, he can really sing, and so he can no longer play while we have choir rehearsal. He has to now be in the adult choir. And so I was 80 years old in the adult choir. But that was how it all got started. But I'd say maybe on a career or ministry side of it, maybe that came along much later. I mean, I started recording as a teenager, really, but I didn't really take it
Okay.
seriously until I was in my early 20s. And my brother and I, which few people know, my brother Daryl and I have an album called Daryl and Michael, and that will remain my business. No one's going to hear it. If you didn't hear it while we were singing the music, you probably won't hear it ever.
That's
Right.
funny.
But I
That was in
mean,
my early
given the
20s.
fact that you were the young singer in the family, did that make you kind of the Michael Jackson of the Bethany family?
Honestly, sometimes it did come across that way because we had a group called Calvary, and it was all the
Oh wow.
brothers in this group, and it was like the Jackson Four.
Jackson 4.
Well, the Bethany Four,
Right.
and so I was the young one, and I would lead songs, and it would always be, who's that little kid, because I was really short and had this big voice and so much personality, and yeah, it was kind of a little bit of that.
Did you start writing songs at that time, or did the songwriting come in a little later?
It did come in later. My brother Daryl wrote all the songs for our group, and then after that,
Okay.
I would write little songs. But like there again, when you're the youngest, you do what your older brothers tell you.
Right.
So they'd be like, "Oh, that's corny. We got a better song than that." You know what I mean? And so, and that was, so it's like, okay, whatever you say, just like I don't know anything, and so. My brother Daryl would encourage me to write, and my brother Chuck a little bit. We do some stuff, but I didn't think I was that guy for some time. But I would always write on my own songs that just between me and the Lord. Just that's it. No one,
Yeah.
just me and God. And I took it seriously. but it wasn't until much later when I moved to Dallas and I met Fred Hammond that he took it seriously. And he was the first person that gave me like opportunities to really write. And before then, I never had a serious opportunity to do that.
Wow.
Did any of those small little choruses or songs that you wrote in the previous years ever come to fruition as far as, being out in the public?
No, not really. I mean, because, well, one of them never made it. I wrote this Christmas song before I moved to Dallas, and it did make it because Fred, we did a movie called Christmas Who Needs It, which is another film that I don't want you guys to see me in. However, I was in this film.
Too late. Cat's out of the bag now. And we're going to do some
I just wrote that down. Yeah, I'm going to Google this.
Well, here's the point.
Okay.
The point of it is this. Maybe that's not the name of it. I can't remember, okay? But here's the point. The point is that I'm so sorry. This is so funny. Okay, so the point is I wrote a Christmas song, and before I moved to Dallas, and I just love like Bing Crosby and all these like standard Christmas songs, Nat King Cole. I just love those.
Yes.
So I wrote this song in the spirit of that genre, but it was all about Christ. And you wouldn't know until I get to the bridge that my point is Christ. So I mean, it was really beautiful. So Fred heard it, really liked it, and he put it on the closing credits of this Christmas movie. And that was the only thing that ever made it out of that season of my life. And to this day, I've always wanted to record that song and release it because it's such a beautiful song. But that's the only song that's really ever made it out of that season of my life. I've written so many more songs since then. And honestly, most of those songs probably weren't very good. But I think songwriting is not necessarily about writing great songs. It's about growth as a person. How do you express yourself? How do you use language? How do you develop a melody? And you're learning that with every song you write. And then eventually that does result in potential opportunities, after you've learned those essential, fundamentals.
How did you learn those fundamentals? Like, what did you go through to learn? Was it the hard way, or did you have some kind of mentor that said, no, you need to do this and this and this?
Well, before I ever had any mentoring, what I did, I just did a lot of listening and comparing what I was doing to, like, does this stand up against songs I like from other artists that are established, and just, it's kind of like A-Bing. Like even if like for guys who mix music, you create music, you produce it and you mix it, you listen to an established album and then you listen to what you mixed and you like, would this sound comparable on the radio? You know what I mean? As a writer, I would do the same thing. Like, is it as cohesive as some of my favorite artists? Kind of a thing. But then when I got with Fred, it was the first time writing was for a major album and it was being scrutinized. And everyone had an opinion. I had to learn how to, co-write, group write. And that was the school. And there was no class there. It was like hard knocks. One day we're in the studio, we're going to write. And I'm like, now this time I'd already been singing, even helping produce the vocals and some of the music and all that. And then we're in a writing session, writing for the next album. And okay, I'm writing now. And it's like, okay. And there was no warm up, no, preliminary discussion. There was no like, this is how splits go. There was nothing. We just he just threw me in and we started doing it. And then I learned along the way. And I would learn from him. I would learn from other people. I would learn what worked, what didn't. And just being immersed in the environment and just totally that was my teacher, and it was a great teacher as well. I mean, I've had so much more from that point moving forward, but that gave me a lot of confidence because I learned that I had a lot more going than I knew. I was way better than I thought I was, so that time had paid off.
That's a nice discovery.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I wasn't terrible,
So
I was pretty good, at the time.
So now you're an established singer, songwriter, worship leader, pastor, recording artist. Did you ever think that would be your career choice? Like, was that where you were heading your entire life, or were there other plans before that?
In the beginning, it was not my intention to be a singer, songwriter, or any of that. In the beginning, my father was a pastor, and I admired that. And I thought that my trajectory in life would be to pastor my father's church one day. And I was a protege. Like everything he did, I wanted to do. And, it's a funny story. Like, well, maybe it's not funny. It's kind of cute. But my father would help the people on the streets. We pastored a church in the inner city of St. Louis. Very dangerous, poor, impoverished area. Liquor stores everywhere, kind of thing. And it's very dangerous and it's just awful. It has been that way for so long. And my father would take care of like the people on the street. And there's this one guy, he was an alcoholic, come home from the war kind of thing, and just been on the streets for years. My father would make sure he had something to eat. I took after that. And so if I saw a guy like that in the streets, I would walk him to the store, to the corner store, and buy him, lunch meat and crackers and cheese and some juice. You couldn't buy water back then. It was juice or soda, right? So buy some juice. And those guys say, hey, come on, Sonny, give me some money. I want drink. And I'm like, no, man, you can't have drink. God loves you. And listen, I'm like 16 years old talking to this guy, in his 40s, like, no, man, you can't have alcohol. It's not good for you, but I'll buy it, and that was our culture. And I just wanted to be like my father and pastor those people. And I had no intention of leaving St. Louis. We were right in this little church, and I'd fallen in love with that. And that's what I thought my life would be.
And so what was the thing that made you realize that that's not necessarily where you were heading?
Well, okay, so my father passed away in 2000. Like, as a matter of fact, Y2K.
Wow.
That day he passed away.
Okay.
We were freaked out for so many reasons.
Yeah.
We were losing, like, the world's coming to an end, and my dad just passed away. Like, what? It was crazy. If you guys remember Y2K, we had all the supplies because we thought the world was coming to an end. My dad passed away that morning. So the church was gone. He knew he was passing away. He gave the church away before he died, and I was lost. So that was the turning point in my life where I knew, well, that's not going to happen. So I during that time, I'd actually went on the road with Tyler Perry to do a play. And so I was gone. When I got back, my father died. I was depressed, and my life just started to turn against my will. I had no choice in the matter. And the trajectory went another way. And then I discovered that it was something else, and just through that journey. And it was not a clear picture for me. I never knew what was going on. Because after my father passed away, I was totally disoriented. Had no idea what my life's purpose was anymore. Because the only purpose I ever thought I had was to pastor the church my father had pastored for those years. That's all gone. And so now I'm lost. I tried to find identity in another ministry. I tried to find it in other things. And along that journey, the Lord told me move to Dallas. Just totally disrupted my life. I moved to Dallas, and within 2 months, I get to Dallas December 1st. By the end of January, sometime at that point, I met Fred Hammond. He invited me to work on his album. By Good Friday, I'm at the Potter's house recording a live album with Fred Hammond. That was not what I thought I was going to be doing at all.
Right.
And mind you, here's what a lot of people don't know. By trade, I'm an electrical designer and project manager. So my father wouldn't even let me do music when I was a teenager. He was like, you can sing at church, but you got to get a job because you're not going to be well. I just never knew it. I just discovered it when Fred was the first person that made me think that this could be a career.
Sure.
It's been a long time since Fred and I wrote anything together, man. That was an incredible season of my life, and it really got me up and going. Like, those were the first awards I'd gotten for writing radio songs, and we produced songs on so many artists. Like, here's a little unknown fact. If anyone knows who the Whispers are, right? The Whispers are
Motown band.
Yeah, man. Like, they were an incredible R&B group from back in the day. Well, me and Fred, worked on a gospel album for them. And I got to write and produce and be a part of that process. So that was cool. So I've done so many cool things that came out of that. But certainly, for his albums and, that was an incredible season.
Wow. Now, how did you end up at Gateway?
So everything leads to, something else. So from Fred to, Marvin Sapp to Kirk Franklin to all these different, people I got to work with. It just kind of that kind of eventually moved me into certain circles that made me more and more I just met more people. So I ended up with Dr. Tony Evans as a worship pastor for Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship. So I was there for about 6 years. While we were there, we did this racial reconciliation event that was on Daystar back in 2016 in the fall. I don't know if you remember this, but this was around all the different, police brutality things that were going on, shootings and Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown and all these different things. So it all culminated, at least at the time, into this racial reconciliation thing on Daystar with everybody who was anybody in the Christian community was there. And we shot live prayers and Sammy Rodriguez and James Robinson and, of course, Tony Evans, all bishops and Harry Jackson, the late Harry Jackson, and so many people from everywhere, okay? They were present at this thing. And Potter's House, Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship, Gateway, and Prestonwood worship leaders, we all came together to do the worship at South Lake, at Gateway. Okay. First time I've been there, but that's the first time I sang there. And I met their team. We really connected, bonded really well. Pastor Robert and I met, we talked, and from then on, they would bring me back, and I would just be a guest artist from time to time. And that's kind of how the relationship started, and it just grew. And that was never like, hey, would you come here? None of that ever happened with me. The Lord one day just told me, that's your church. And that was crazy because I'm a worship pastor at Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship, serving Dr. Tony Evans. I'm also on the elders board. I'm also running, because of my project management electrical background, I'm running the projects for the sanctuary renovation and the integration project and all these different things. And
you're a busy man.
I'm incredibly busy, and I'm releasing my own projects, traveling. I'm doing all these things. So all this happens, and somehow God navigates that, and I obey Him, and everyone confirms it. This is a word from the Lord, and this is crazy. Wow. But in that season, I transitioned to Gateway, and that all landed the beginning of 2019 in January.
2019. That's a month before the worldwide pandemic. So I guess there was
actually 1 year, just 1 year exactly, because I got 1 year at Gateway, and that was the year we started really slow, because I was like, okay, Gateway's a big church. There's 10 campuses.
Yeah,
let's get you acclimated to our culture. I took that year, I led at all the campuses over and over again. I would go out and serve and learn and just really soak in the culture, and the effort of taking what I've learned and all the wisdom of leadership, but also learning to apply that to the culture and the inner workings of what Gateway is. I did that for about a year. 2020 comes around, we do first conference, and we're getting into the year, and before we know it, everything's shutting down in 2020. And we went right into all these online recordings, and it's just, that was a journey, man. And especially in our church, we had so much, because not only did you have that side of it with the pandemic, and, that was political nature for the country and the world even. And then you had all the racial tension that broke out. So it was just, there was so much that happened in my coming into the organization, and that just who would ever known that that was what God had in mind, and I would be, facing and walking through that. But it was an incredible transition.
Given the fact that you were visiting all these various campuses, did you find there was a culture difference between the different locations?
Not.
I mean, there were differences based on demographic, so there were some subtle differences, not major. Most people who come to Gateway's almost like, I was going to say McDonald's, but we talk more like Chick-fil-A, because Chick-fil-A just has such a high standard. It's a Christian company.
I like how we brought food into this conversation somehow. It's incredible.
And I'm hungry.
Yes. and not to mention I'm on Whole30, so I can't even have Chick-fil-A right now. But the point is, we won't get into that. But the point is, like, when people come to a Gateway campus, there's a consistency about it, so you kind of know what to expect.
Sure.
There's an intentionality around not everyone's singing the exact same songs, but pulling from a very similar song bank or catalog of music. And so while there may be minor differences, by and large, most of those experiences are very similar. And then, of course, the live messages happen at South Lake. All the other campuses get a stream message. So from worship to the message is definitely consistent because it's the exact same message for everyone. So it's not that much. Now in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, it is very different. So because
Right.
it's a totally different culture in every way. Of course, everything else is in the DFW area, so not so much in the DFW area.
Can we take a few minutes just to chat about your latest project? You've got something going on. It's a new album.
Congrats.
Dropping at the end of the month. Am I correct?
Absolutely. June 30th, Overflow will be releasing a live worship album, and I've got a lot to say about that.
Well, you go ahead and talk. Aisha and I are just going to sit back and drink our coffee. Well, I'm going to drink my coffee. You're going to drink your tea, and you just go, and we'll be back with you in 15, 20, an hour and a half if you like.
No,
I'm kidding.
Well, I would love to indulge on that, but out of respect for your audience and time restriction, I would say that this album is a very different album for me. It's not my first. It's not my last, but it is my first live album. And the Lord gave me a vision for this album while I was still at Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship before I ever got to Gateway.
Okay.
And he gave me a vision for a global sound, and it was called Overflow. And he gave me this whole concept, and this idea of overflow began to consume my life. And one of the things that really was birthed out of this was such an intimacy with God, and this journey of the overflow of God's Spirit in my life, and a number of different applications of how, when God would speak this word to me, what it would mean in different ways. However, I started this journey of writing and pursuing this sound that I never heard. And it's really like being a gospel artist, and like from 2009, I was leading worship at a predominantly white church, but it was multicultural, multi-ethnic church. And so that was like the beginning of like my worship pastor experience, not being immersed in a Black church. Gospel church. So while I'm doing all this stuff for Fred and Kirk, I'm not doing that on Sundays. I'm singing Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna. Right. I'm singing that.
Right.
I'm singing Hillsong and Bethel and Planet Shakers, New Life. You guys remember that? He has overcome, bind them up. I'm singing all that. And so I'm learning how to navigate two different worlds.
Sure.
And two different cultures. And then I start traveling abroad, like going to London and doing worship there. And I'm going to go to Sri Lanka and do worship there. And all these different places I'm starting to go, and I'm learning, how do I flow in a way going to Tokyo? I start going there every year, leading worship in different places. And now I have this tension in my life where I can go this direction or that one. I can try to become CCM, which I'm not, or I can try to be replicate what I've done in gospel. And it's like, that's not me either. This
Right.
album was the first like produced body of work that this all came together from inception. So every song written with me and a white person and a person from Australia and the different people I wrote with, Mitch Wong and Mia Fields and Zach Rowe and Mark Harris, and just we all wrote together, and God would give me songs in prayer, and then I would finish most of them with a group of writers. And man, that was the overflow. And here's the idea. If one of the concepts of overflow I'll give, it's practical for everyone, whether you're writing an album or not. The idea is whatever God's gonna do in your life, it should be an overflow, or rather from the overflow of private intimacy. And this album is truly the embodiment of what God does when you take him seriously in private. And things that you don't know are significant in private become incredibly significant publicly. Because the songs that God gave would have never come if there hadn't been an investment of private intimacy with him and opening myself with the opportunity to hear something that I would never have heard that then becomes a song for everyone to hear. So that's what overflow is. It's an experience with God. It's birthed out of intimacy, and it's partnered multi-ethnically, and the sound it reflects all of those things and all those elements.
That's exciting.
It sounds very relatable as well. Like the people, because you said it comes from that private moment, and everybody has moments, but they think it's their own, and very often it is. But it's also relatable because they can listen and they can respond basically and know what you're talking about.
Exactly. And like regardless of whatever your life purpose is, what God is producing in your life for the benefit of the world and for his glory is going to be birthed in an intimate relationship between you and him. It starts with receiving Jesus Christ. It starts with salvation. It starts with knowing him in a relationship, and then knowing him daily and relating with him, praying daily, seeking him daily, to know him intimately. And that process births everything from how you raise your kids to how you uphold the integrity in your business, to what business you actually start, being led by the Spirit. If you can hear the Spirit, you can be led by the Spirit. And that comes from that place. And the overflow of that is the result of what's been planted and invested in privately.
That's such good stuff, man. Such good stuff. And it's so necessary. We've been programmed to just have an appreciation for music that comes from a place of religion or just the normal way of doing things. When you bring in that intimacy factor, man, there's such depth and wells overflowing, but it has to come from a place of intimacy. And it's just a beautiful thing. I'm excited about your project. I'm excited about the ministry that will take place because of it. And I know that it's gonna do a lot of good in a lot of different places.
That is my prayer. My prayer is for it to, first and foremost, for it to be an opportunity for people to encounter God, to have their own transformational experience with God. That's my key word for my ministry, transformational experiences. That's what we do.
Sure.
We create those transformational experiences so that people can encounter God and develop an intimate relationship of their own. And you know what? It's like there are moments in your life that you get exposed to something and not everything changes your life, right? But when you see when Jesus meets like the woman at the well and different individuals throughout the gospel. Even Paul on the road to Damascus, when Jesus meets someone, it is a transformational experience, and their life is never the same. But what marks that experience is an ongoing life of intimacy and relationship with him. And that's what our goal is. I've had those experiences for myself. Even as a believer, I've had moments of transformational change and experiences that have totally redefined how I see the God I already know. And so it's not just for the believer, but it's even for the believer who needs a resetting in the way they see God and in the way that they experience him on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our pastor's been talking about experiencing transformation and not behavioral modification, but spiritual transformation. And again, that comes from intimacy and putting that time in and listening and worshiping God. Like, that stuff is from a secret place,
Absolutely.
I'm reminded of that word. He says, he that dwells in the secret place of the Most High will abide under the shadow of the Almighty. And that secret place is not a corporate place,
Yes.
That secret place is one-on-one. But everybody will in turn be able to benefit.
Yeah, and from that, basically what you're saying, Aisha, from that still comes now the overflow from your own life, right?
Right.
So it just kind of grows and spreads that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I take these words from Jesus. I believe it's in John 15. He talks about how his friends obey him. And if you love me, you keep my commandments. But basically what God is saying, that from love, you learn to obey what God's laws are. It doesn't have the other way around. You don't learn the laws and then love God. You fall in love with God and then you learn to obey him. And you will never, ever master discipline that's not inspired by love. And so when you understand the foundation of the reason God sent Jesus, it was for love. The pattern of God is that. I mean, you see the children of Israel are delivered and set free before they ever learn about what his laws are. And God is always about the relationship before he's about the regulation. And for us, the relationship, it's not for us to say, well, I'm not all about religion. And religion is essentially just a, set of practices based on your admiration and worship for God. But that religion is baseless without love.
Right.
So it's valid, according to James, when it's placed in the context of a relationship. And it's only then possible to do what God says if you fall in love with the God who said it. And that's the journey and that's the wrestle. But that's also where I see so much of the benefit and why I believe these transformational experiences are so powerful, because when you encounter God, it helps you to fall in love with him either for the first time or all over again.
Oh, sure.
Got to say, I'm really
motivation.
I'm going to preaching here. I didn't even do all that. So.
Yeah.
Well, like you said, you could go on and on about it. I'm looking forward to hearing the new album, and like you said, it's out June 30th.
Yeah, June 30th, the full album comes out, and I'm telling you, I just cannot wait. It's going to be so exciting.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, thank you so much for hanging with us on Between the Grooves.
This has been awesome. I'm looking at it, and I'm following you guys, so I can now start to listen to what you guys do. And I'm incredibly grateful that you guys had me on. Thank you, Aisha. Thank you, James. I appreciate you both for this. Has been awesome.
Wow, really enjoyed that conversation with Michael Bethany. You can check out his website, michaelbethany.com. Check out his music and everything that he's up to.
Sounds good. And right here, we're going to take a listen to some artist advice from my girl, Stacia Hepburn.
I would say if you are speaking about worship leading, make sure your heart is in the right place with the Lord. Let your worship leading flow from a heart that is 100% centered and connected with Jesus.
It's important. Kind of ties in with what we were talking about with Michael today, and the level of intimacy that's necessary with everything that we do, and having that overflow.
Yeah, she said it best. I honestly have nothing to add.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, thank you for tuning in to Between the Grooves and checking out our conversation with Michael Bethany. Thanks to Stacia for dropping in that artist advice as well. And thank you to Justine, our producer, who's back after being under the weather for a couple of weeks there. Justine makes it happen for us, that's for sure. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to Faith Strong Today's Between the Grooves podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider sharing it with your friends, rating our podcast, or giving us some love on your socials to your amazing friends and followers will only help us reach more people. We'd also love to hear from you and share your feedback in an upcoming episode. Send your video or written message to Aisha and James on Facebook and Twitter @Between Grooves, or email us anytime, hello@faithstrongtoday.com.